Ooh, that looks tasty. The Hungry Gamer is back with another game review, and today we're talking about Erune from Arcada Studios. And everything you see here is from the Heroic Edition, which means that these 3D bits of furniture are actually 3D rather than being simply tiles. It also means there's a little bit more you can do to advance to a higher level, but for the most part, everything else is the same in the regular edition and this one. Now, before I get started, please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that's where you'll find the corrections. Additionally, I do just need to say that this was sent to me by the publisher, though I've received no money to create this video. So, what this game is it is a classic dungeon crawler game in which you are going to be going around, diving through dungeons, and getting stronger and stronger as you try to defeat some kind of evil. However, as you're doing it, the story is going to come from the app that comes with the game right here. And, well, that's pretty much the shtick of the game. Now, if you are not interested in how this game is played, so jump into my final thoughts, then you will go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game is going to work. First thing that you need to know is the app is going to do most of the heavy lifting for you. And I will say there are some minor spoilers here for the first quest that you'll do, but since it's the first quest, I'm not too worried about it. I'll also say that what I have set up on the board is just kind of random, so I can demonstrate how things work later, and is not what you're going to see here. But the app's going to tell you what things look like. And so it's telling us here what to set out, where we start, the furniture, and we would put a location marker there because when we get to that spot, we would be able to interact with it. In fact, we would actually tell the app to do what it says. Or when we go through the door, we would say that the adventurer opens the door. So what that would look like is something like this. The archer examines the cellar.
As you look around the room, you see torn bags scattered on the ground and huge rat prints on the floor. Suddenly, you hear some noise in the stairs, and a young woman appears.
Okay, and so on. And I kind of skipped ahead there, and then I accidentally said my thing in there, and as you can see, the app didn't understand what I was saying, but it tells us the gear that we get, and we would find out who it is that can equip it and how much damage it does right on there. And what we would do is we would actually write that information right here on our character sheet. And I've kind of advanced a bit further, but you can kind of see the type of stuff that we have there. Now, continuing on, what's going to wind up happening eventually is you're going to wind up having combat. And we see I've just kind of put a single goblin out there. And the way each round works is first the shadow of the Master of Shadows goes. And you can play this game one versus many, in which it would be another player that would go, or the app will tell you what happens. And usually what that does is at the beginning of the turn, it might tell you that there is a trap near you, which you would simply place one down, something you can disarm later if you so choose, and if you step on it, you have to tell the app that you've triggered a trap. And it will also say things like, and it will also tell you what random thing might happen. For example, sometimes a fairy shows up and you're going to roll the d6 here. And if you happen to roll a 6, which I didn't, you would get something or lose something, etc., etc. The other thing that it'll do is it will tell you if there's any special rules for the bad guys. It might tell you they're going to target a certain type of character, or it might tell you that they are going to be using certain abilities in this given round. So perhaps this goblin's going to use lightning attack. So if I'm next to him, I try to move away, he would get to attack me. Now let's talk about the way combat works. The way that works is you're going to check what your weapon does, and we'll just pretend that my weapon here, my ranged bow, does 2 black dice. I'm going to move this out of the way. And we check over here and we find out that the bad guy has 1 black die of defense. And so we would each roll. There's my attack roll, and there's a defense roll. And you'll see that they blocked 1, but 1 got through. I would have done a damage, which would be enough to kill this goblin, and I would gain 2 experience for killing him. However, before that, as I said, the bad guys get to go, and so we would simply move, and he has a movement of 8, and he can move diagonal, he would move right on up, and then he would make his attack, which here tells me it is 2 dice. I would check my defense, and we'll just pretend that my defense is a black and a blue. So I'd roll my defense, and here I got myself a stamina, which I'll talk about in a moment, and he did 1 damage. So I would take 1 damage, but I would also gain a stamina. And stamina gets used on all of these different skills that you can get. And there's a bunch more than this. I just happened to grab a few for this particular game. But let's just say I already had a stamina, but let's just say I had some stamina already. And this attack happened, and so I decide I'm going to go ahead and play 2 stamina and take no damage. And then this skill would be used until the next round. In addition to that, there are various spells that you can use. And spells are fairly interesting in this game. So what happens is you get a spell field. There's a whole bunch of different types of spells you can get, and you have a set amount of mana that you can use each game. And we'll just pretend I have 2 mana. And we'll just say that what I do is I go ahead and I'll put out a lower level one right here. There we go. And we'll just say that I do this right here. I spend my 1 mana on the fulgurating stalagmite, and each spell can only be used once per game. However, what that would do is it would allow me to cast this spell, in which case I would roll the blue magic die, and I got 1 skull and 1 lightning bolt. And so that tells me here that that means my attack, because I got 1 lightning bolt, would do 3 black dice worth of damage, and I would roll that, and they would roll their defense, etc., etc. And again, there's a whole bunch of different types of spells that you can get throughout the game. And that is mostly how this works. However, the app's also going to do everything else in the game. So for example, if we remember, this door in the cellar is called the cellar door. And so what I can do, and again, this is not set up exactly the same, is I can tell it who opens the door. The archer opens the cellar door. And then I have a choice of how I go. I can go in sneakily, I can charge in, etc., etc. And what will happen is it will wind up telling me what's on the other side of the door. And so as not to spoil anything, I will just say that I walked over there, I opened this door, and there's a lovely little open door thing there. And on the other side, there was this little hallway, like so, with a closed door at the end. And inside that door, there was a rat, and so on and so on, and I would continue. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can search things. So, for example, maybe I want to go next to a table and search the table. So maybe I would say, the archer searches the table. And it tells me right there that while searching the table, I found 3 dwarvish gold coins. Other things that you have are you can take potions, you can drink alcohol, and it will do different things. So, for example, I might do the archer drinks mead, and I'm going to get 1 more black die on the next round, on my next attack. And as I said, everything is done in this app. So, for example, maybe I felt I had to step on this trap. The archer triggers a trap. And as you can see, I said the wrong thing. I should say, a trap has been triggered. And it says a poison gas is spreading throughout the room. You and your allies present suffer a black die of unstoppable damage, and so on and so on. You'll go through, and as you fight more things, it'll tell you what you need to do. So if we have this big boss here, it might say, well, when the boss is defeated, here are the boss's stats, and when you defeat it, tell me you defeated the boss, and so on and so on. And that's pretty much how the game works. And as I said, there's multiple different stories you can go through, and there are 4 different characters that you can level up, and you have a lot of agency with what it is that you do with those characters. But for the most part, that's it. So, what do I like about this game? The first thing that I like about the game is I really do like the combat. It is opposed roles, and adding some stats here and there, but there's not enough things going on that it ever feels fiddly to me. And along with that, I really do like the stamina system. That either you're going to hit, you're going to have a block, or you'll get stamina. And sometimes you're chucking these dice, and you're really just hoping for that stamina, which I find really, really interesting. And because of that, it makes the leveling up even more satisfying, because you're getting a skill pretty much every level. And so pretty rapidly, you have a big old stack of skills, and depending on how you're playing, you can be really starved for those stamina points to use, or maybe you're getting a lot of them, so you might not be doing a lot of damage. Suddenly you're using all these skills, you're doing things, and I just really find it very satisfying how much control you have over how you're creating your characters. The next thing I'll say is, I also really do like the spell casting. I like you get these kind of spell fields that are out there, and it's very simple to use them. You put the mana on it, that's it, it's done, you can't use it again. It's over with these kind of one-use spells a la old school D&D, right? You have to memorize your spells, you use it, and they're gone. But I find it very satisfying. You just chuck it on there, and you have to really choose when you're going to use it, and it makes the casting of spells very important. It feels like an important decision every single time I cast a spell, and that's how I like to do spell casting, so I really like that as well. I also find that I enjoy the simplicity of most of the equipment. Most of the equipment, it's very simple. It's going to give you flavor, but really it does this many dice, and it does this many dice, and it's very, very simple. There's not a lot of stuff going on when it comes to your equipment and your armor. It's just these are the dice that it's giving you. It's kind of boiled everything down and kind of streamlined it. Though there are some items that are very specific with very specific ability. And full disclosure, I've only played this game in the co-op mode, but I also like how the app is pretty clear about what the changes are every single round, what's going to happen, what the Master of Shadows is doing, and I also like how you never really know when something's going to pop up. There's just random events that will happen, and I do think that the app makes that work pretty darn well, and so I do appreciate that. I also like how the app manages the discovery, because you really have no idea what the board's going to look like. Though I suppose you could go into the Master of Shadows book and do that, but you don't know what it's going to look like, and the app does better than anything else the app does is the way it does discovery of new rooms, discovery of new locations, and the way it labels stuff in there. I think overall, when it comes to this, the doors and what you need to say, it does a good job of labeling that for you. And I find it very interesting and very exciting because you truly have no idea what's going to happen when you say, I checked this. Along with that, I like the way the searching is done. As you're searching something, again, you have no idea what's going to show up. Ever. And that, to me, is very cool. And I've even played the intro scenario more than once and searched things and gotten different results. So I find that pretty darn cool also. And then the final thing that I'm going to highlight that I particularly... Well, the final two things I'm going to highlight that I particularly enjoy are, first, I really do like the speed of the game. The quests just aren't very long, and it doesn't take up a ton of space with the board. The tiles are relatively small, there's not a lot of them, and you're just putting them out in different ways and getting different scenarios, different things, and I always like that. I think that is very, very clever, and it works really, really well. The last thing I'll say is they were kind of sending me the Heroic Edition, and the little bits of scenery are just great. They are so good. I love the scenery bits and bobs that have come with this game. Just fantastic. So, what are my quibbles with the game? The first thing is, when you're building your characters, it takes up way more space than you think it's gonna. It just starts to sprawl after a few levels with all your cards and stuff, and I was playing with two characters, and at the beginning I thought, well, maybe I should add a third one. No, don't add a third one, because I would be totally overwhelmed. So it does sprawl a lot, and you should very quickly get a lot of abilities and a lot of things going on, and it can be a little bit hard to manage exactly what it is that you have and what you're doing, what you're using, and all of that. My next quibble is, the story is interesting, and I understand what I'm doing, but it's not so interesting that I'm like, yes, I have to know more. Like, I know I'm going to go to a place, I'm going to destroy the portal, I'm going to go to a place and do this. So it is a fine story. It is an interesting story, but it's not the type of story that you're not going to buy this game for the story. And then my only other quibble is the app. And to be fair, there was an update on the operating system on my phone, and that broke the app. Same thing on iOS. They got the iOS one back up first, mostly. But the app just was not working well. And what I mean by that is, when I was playing, for whatever reason, even though I kept saying I have these multiple characters in the game, only the archer was getting hit with random events. That's it. Over and over and over. Also, it's very, very specific in what you have to say to make things happen. And to find out what you have to say, you have to go back through the app to where I said before how it's really, really well labeled, but you got to go back. And it's as specific as saying you have to say, open the stone door. The archer opens the crypt door. The archer opens this door. And you have to be very specific or it doesn't work. It just says, I don't know what you're saying, check your wording. And the same thing happens when you're looking at fighting things. So when the bosses show up, the stats are in the app, which is great. They're right there. But there's no easy way to get back to the monster. You're just scrolling back up until you find that monster, and then it's there again. And then, of course, you say something, it drops back down to the bottom. And there are some ways around it, but you have to know what the shortcuts are. The same thing has to do with all of the searching and all the things that you do and traps and whatever. There's very specific stuff that you say to alert the app that this is what's going on. And that's not a problem to me. But there's no player aid that says, here's the basic things that you might have to say. And I really wish there was one. In fact, when I go back and play again, I will probably start writing them down somewhere just so I always know, oh, no, it's a search, I do this, search, I do that. And so that can get frustrating. And then I'm also going to highlight something that I know a lot of detractors from app-based games often say is, well, what if it doesn't work? And I've never been like, yeah, whatever, it's fine, that's not going to happen. Well, it did happen. And I actually couldn't play for a few days because I couldn't level up. Because even though the app was somewhat working, the part where it tells you what you gain on a level up, that was broken. And I wasn't able to enter the information in there until I was able to finally get a chart that they have, so I knew what I was doing. It's readily available, I just didn't know it was there. So there is that danger, and so I think the biggest problem is the app 1.0. Now, I do know that they have a Kickstarter going right now, and there's app 2.0. And my assumption is a lot of this stuff is going to be fixed. And to me, going into my final thoughts here, if the app worked better, this is a really fun game. Like, it's a really fun, fast and dirty, interesting game that I enjoy. And it's not a very big box either. It's a big box, but it's not a huge box, right, for a dungeon crawl. So I like all of that. I think this game is on the edge of being a very fun, very good game. The question is, what do they do with the app for this Erune 2.0? If the app is easier to manage, it's easier to find things, it's easier to know what you need to say, you don't have to be so specific, then this game is a knockout. If the app stays exactly as it is, it's a fun game that I enjoyed and I would absolutely play, and it's definitely worth checking out if you are interested for kind of everything that's in the dungeon crawl space. If you're kind of looking for the interesting titles, this is definitely an interesting title. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. And I know I spent a lot of time on that app, but truly, honestly and truly, I really do enjoy it. And I had a good time with it. So, there you have it, folks. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Maybe become a channel member. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.